Breaking news out of South Sudan. The South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, has issued a dramatic ultimatum, giving armed civilians in Warrap State and Mayom County in Unity State 1 week to voluntarily disarm or face forced disarmament. This stark warning, announced on Monday, June 9, from Army headquarters in Juba by SSPDF spokesman Major General Lul Rue Koang, signifies a critical juncture in the nation's struggle with pervasive insecurity. Troops are already deployed, underscoring the military's resolve. This significant move follows directly from President Salva Kiir's declaration of a 6-month state of emergency in both Warrap and Mayom. This declaration, made in response to escalating insecurity, grants security forces sweeping powers, including warrantless searches, curfews, and detention without charge. Such measures highlight the gravity of the situation and the government's determination to restore order. Warrap, President Kiir's home state, has been a persistent hotspot for recurring violence, notably revenge attacks and cattle raids. The recent military airstrikes targeting raiders in Gogril and Mayom last week serve as a prelude to this broader disarmament campaign. The SSPDF explicitly states that the operation's core objective is to curb this rampant intercommunal violence that has plagued these regions. South Sudan's history is unfortunately replete with attempts at civilian disarmament, often met with mixed results and, at times, increased violence. Many communities remain heavily armed, driven by a complex interplay of factors. In areas where state protection is perceived as weak or absent, communities arm themselves for self-preservation against cattle raids, intercommunal clashes, and other forms of violence. This creates a vicious cycle where disarmament of one group can leave them vulnerable to armed neighbors. Cattle are a primary source of wealth and status in many South Sudanese communities. Raiding is not just about theft but also a deep-seated cultural practice and a means of accumulating resources, further incentivizing weapon ownership. The young nation continues to grapple with weak governance, a nascent justice system, and a limited monopoly on the use of force. This institutional fragility makes it challenging to enforce disarmament effectively and ensure long-term peace. Previous disarmament campaigns have sometimes been criticized for being unevenly applied, leading to resentment and a lack of trust between communities and security forces. Instances where forced disarmament has resulted in casualties or human rights abuses further deepen this mistrust. Major General Lul Rue Koang's warning of harsh and punitive measures for noncompliance, while intended to underscore the seriousness of the ultimatum, also echoes concerns raised by civil society. As noted by some activists, forced disarmament, without addressing the underlying causes of insecurity and building trust, risks escalating violence rather than quelling it. A 2020 disarmament campaign in Tunj East, for example, tragically resulted in over 127 deaths, including security personnel. This week will be crucial for Warrap and Mayom County. The SSPDF's ultimatum represents a bold and potentially risky gambit to impose order. As the deadline approaches, the eyes of South Sudan, and indeed the world, will be watching to see if this decisive action can finally pave the way for a more secure future, or if it will add another chapter to the nation's complex and often violent history of disarmament. We'll continue to follow this developing story closely. Stay tuned to news updates for more.